and a big warm welcome. This is Crayons and Curriculum with Hannah Rogers and Jamie Fava, where we dive into the big, important conversations that shape early childhood education and beyond. We're here to explore the many layers of early learning, and we're so glad you're joining us. Today, we're tackling a topic that often sparks curiosity, questions, and even a little hesitation: sexuality education for young children. It's one of our favorite subjects because it's all about empowering kids with knowledge. We've had a lot of educators and parents ask, how do we teach sexuality education in a way that's modern and age appropriate? So today, we're diving in with a very special guest to get some expert advice, an ex-educator turned sexologist, Dr. Lucas Thorne. Together, we'll be exploring how we can support children in understanding their bodies, setting boundaries, and feeling confident to ask trusted adults important questions. Hello everyone, this is Jamie, educator, advocate, and passionate about making learning meaningful for our youngest students.
And I'm Hannah, also an educator and equally passionate about ensuring that every child gets the knowledge and skills that they need to navigate the world. Yes, even the big topics like today's.
That's right. Today we're talking about sexuality education in kindergarten. What it is, why it matters, and why it's never too early to start teaching kids about body autonomy, respect, and boundaries. And before you panic, no, we're not talking about teaching 5-year-olds about intercourse. We're talking about foundational, age-appropriate learning that keeps kids safe and helps them develop healthy relationships with themselves and others.
But before we get into that, let's take a moment to reflect on our own introductions to sexuality education. Jamie, I know it was ages ago, but do you remember the first time you learned about it?
Oh, I definitely remember. It was the late 80s. I was in grade 6, and suddenly we were all herded into separate classrooms. Girls in one, boys in the other. It was awkward, it was confusing, and honestly, it was way too late. Up until that moment, most of what I knew had come from whispered playground rumors and the occasional very special episode of a TV show called Bleu Nuit. Let's just say, not the most reliable resources.
I hear you. My experience was different, but not much better. I was in elementary school in the early 2010s, and while things had technically evolved, the approach was still, let's say, inefficient. We had one rushed lesson sometime in grade 5 or 6, led by a visibly uncomfortable teacher reading from an outdated textbook. No discussions about consent, boundaries, or even emotions, just the biological basis and a whole lot of awkward silence.
And that's exactly why we're having this conversation today. Sexuality education isn't just about biology. It's about safety, respect, and understanding ourselves and others. So in today's episode, we'll be breaking down why sexuality education belongs in kindergarten, how we can approach it in age-appropriate ways, and how to address common concerns, especially from parents. And we have an amazing guest joining us, Dr. Lucas Thorne, a former teacher turned sexologist who's going to help us navigate some of the trickier aspects of this topic.
We'll also be taking questions from listeners, real teachers like you, who want practical advice on dealing with parents, teaching consent, and making these lessons engaging and meaningful for young learners.
So grab your coffee or tea or green juice, get comfy, and let's get into it. Okay, Hannah, let's begin with some common myths. One of the biggest myths out there is the idea that young children are asexual, that they just don't engage with topics related to sexuality at all. But that's not true.
Exactly. When we talk about sexuality in early childhood, we're not talking about adult sexual attraction. Instead, we're looking at the things like body awareness, curiosity, and how children learn about gender, relationships, and reproduction in an age-appropriate way.
Right. Think about how kids play house or pretend to get married. They're already exploring ideas about families and relationships, and they are naturally curious. They ask questions about their bodies and where babies come from and about the world around them.
Another common myth is that children will grow up to be heterosexual, but that assumption just isn't accurate.
Nope. Sexual orientation isn't something that follows one set path. It's shaped by a combination of biological psychological, and social factors. So when we assume heterosexuality is the default, we are actually reinforcing a very narrow view of identity.
That's why it's so important to create an inclusive environment from the start, one where kids see diverse families and relationships reflected in the classroom.
Yep. Then there's the big misconception that sexuality education in early childhood is inappropriate. And I think this one comes from people not really understanding what's actually being taught.
Yes, a lot of people assume sexuality education means teaching young children about intercourse, but that's not the case at all. It's really about things like bodily awareness, consent, relationships, and personal safety.
And let's be real, kids are already learning about these things in informal ways. They pick up messages from parents, from caregivers, older siblings, and even the media. So if we don't provide clear and accurate information, they're left to figure things out on their own, which often leads to misinformation.
So now that we've debunked those myths, let's talk about why sexuality education is actually so important at the kindergarten level.
First of all, it's a child's right. Every student, no matter their age, deserves access to accurate and inclusive information. And sexuality education isn't just about reproduction, it covers a whole range of important topics.
Exactly. In fact, there are 8 key themes that comprehensive sexuality education focuses on. The first one is relationships. The second one is values, rights, culture, and sexuality. The third is understanding gender. The fourth is violence and staying safe. The fifth is skills for health and well-being. The sixth is the human body and development. Seventh, sexuality and sexual behavior. And eighth, sexual and reproductive health.
Right, and here in Quebec, the Ministry of Education actually recommends that kindergarten teachers introduce students to topics like sexual growth and body image, as well as pregnancy and birth.
Yeah, and that's because these topics help promote equality in relationships, prevent sexual violence, foster a healthy body image, and encourage respect for sexual and gender diversity.
Plus, let's not forget that young children are already growing up in a world where sexuality is present. Whether it's in the media, in their families, or in daily interactions, they are taking in information. So rather than avoiding these conversations, we need to provide the right tools to help them navigate the world safely and confidently.
I love that. Well said, Jamie. Sexuality education isn't about taking away childhood innocence. It's about making sure kids have the knowledge they need to understand themselves and others in a healthy way.
Absolutely. And by starting early, we're setting the foundation for lifelong learning, respect, and healthy relationships. Okay, let's move on to some expert advice from our sexologist, Dr. Lucas Thorne.
Lucas began his career as an elementary school teacher, where he quickly realized that kids ask far more questions than adults are prepared to answer, especially when it comes to the awkward topics. After years of fielding unexpected inquiries like, where do babies come from, Lucas decided to deepen his expertise and become a certified sexologist. Now he spends his days helping educators, parents, and kids navigate sexuality education with confidence, clarity, and a much-needed sense of humor. His approach? Straightforward, age-appropriate, and always backed by research. Dr. Thorne believes that teaching kids about body autonomy, consent, and healthy relationships isn't just important, it's essential. When he's not breaking down taboos or training teachers, you can find Lucas swimming in a river in New Brunswick, playing in a local hockey league, or chilling at home with his cat Archie. He's passionate about his community, his work, and ensuring that kids grow up with the knowledge they need to navigate the world safely and confidently. Dr. Lucas Thorne, thank you so much for joining us today. We know you have a wealth of knowledge when it comes to teaching sexuality education as both an elementary school teacher and a sexologist, and we're really excited to have you here to help us navigate this important topic.
Yes, we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. Sexuality education can feel like a tricky subject, especially in early childhood, and we know a lot of educators, ourselves included, have questions about how to approach it in a way that's both effective and developmentally appropriate.
Yes, thank you both so much for having me. I love what you both are doing with this podcast, and I'm really excited to talk about the topic of sexuality education in kindergarten today. These conversations are so important, and I love that we're taking the time to break things down and provide teachers and parents with the confidence they need to tackle these topics in the classroom and at home.
Absolutely. So let's jump in with the question from our first caller.
Hi, my name is Carlene. I'm leaving you a message for your podcast. I'm a kindergarten teacher, and I believe that it's important to implement sexuality education in our classrooms. I realized that a lot of parents are having pushbacks towards this topic because some parents believe that they're too young to learn about it, or they are in adversity for this topic in our lessons. I was wondering, what could I do to reassure the parents and explain how it is valuable to me to continue to have this conversation with my students from the young age. Thank you. Leave me a message.
Thank you so much for your question. It's completely understandable that some parents might feel uneasy about sexuality education in kindergarten. A lot of this concern comes from misunderstandings about what's actually being taught.
Exactly. Many parents hear sexuality education and assume it means talking about topics that aren't age appropriate. But in reality, early childhood sexuality education focuses on things like body awareness, consent, relationships, and personal safety. Concepts that are not only appropriate but essential for young children.
Right. And a great way to reassure parents is to highlight that these lessons align with their children's natural curiosity and development stage. For example, young kids ask questions about bodies, families, and relationships all the time. It's completely normal for them to wonder where babies come from, especially when they see that their mother, a teacher, or another adult is pregnant. These questions are a natural part of their learning, and as educators, our role is to provide accurate, age-appropriate answers instead of letting them fill in the gaps with misinformation.
And I think another key point is emphasizing that this education actually helps keep children safer. Teaching things like the proper name for body parts and personal boundaries gives kids the language and confidence they need to express themselves and seek help if they ever need it.
That's so important. One strategy that can help ease parents' concern is open communication. Letting them know what's being taught, how it's being taught, and why it's beneficial can make a huge difference. For example, when my daughter's grade 1 teacher started their unit on childhood sexuality, she reached out to all the parents in the class to invite us in during the lesson. What a great way to ease parents' minds on the topic.
Yes, it's also worth reminding parents that sexuality education is already happening in informal ways, through TV, books, peers, and even their own conversations at home. By addressing it in a structured, age-appropriate way in the classroom, we're ensuring that children receive accurate and healthy messages instead of a mixed or leading ones.
So what we're trying to say is if you're facing pushback, stay confident in the importance of this learning, keep the lines of communication open, and help parents see that this is about equipping children with the knowledge that supports their well-being, not rushing them into anything beyond their developmental level.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, sexuality education is about respect, safety, and understanding. Things that every parent wants for their child.
Well said. Thanks again for your question, and we hope this helps.
All right, now let's hear from our next caller.
Hello! I love that kids are learning about consent early on, but I sometimes struggle with explaining it in a way they really understand. What are some simple, effective ways to teach young children about body autonomy and boundaries?
Ooh, this is such a good question. Teaching consent and boundaries to young children can feel tricky at first, but really it's about simple, everyday moments.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that consent isn't just about saying no to touch. It's about personal space, respecting others, and feeling in control of our bodies.
Exactly. And the best part? Kids already understand these ideas in different ways. Think about when a child says, "Hey, that's my toy," or "I don't like when you yell at me." That's them setting boundaries. Our job as educators and caregivers is to help them connect those same instincts to their own bodies and relationships.
That makes so much sense. So, Dr. Lucas, what are some simple ways we can introduce these ideas in the classroom?
One of my favorite ways is through role-playing or play-based learning. We can model everyday consent by using clear, easy language. For example, if a child wants a hug, we encourage them to ask first, "Can I give you a hug?" And the other child has the right to say yes or no. If they say no, no problem. We teach kids that it's okay to express their comfort level.
I love that. And we can extend it to beyond physical touch, like asking before borrowing a crayon or joining a game. It reinforces that seeking permission applies to all kinds of interactions.
Exactly. Another powerful tool? Books and stories. Read alouds. Kids relate so well to characters and stories about personal space and body autonomy. These can make lessons really stick. One I always recommend is Yes, No by Megan Madison, Jessica Rowley, and Isabel Roxas. It's about honesty and personal boundaries.
That's a great suggestion. I also love using the your body, your choice rule. When we say things like your body belongs to you, you get to decide if you want a high five or a fist bump, kids start to understand that their choices matter.
Yes. And what about when kids don't respect boundaries yet, like when they get too rough on the playground?
That's where gentle redirection comes in. Instead of saying, don't do that, we reframe it as, let's check in. Did your friends say that they're okay with that? This encourages empathy and helps kids practice checking for consent in real time.
I love that. And it shows them that setting and respecting boundaries isn't about being in trouble. It's about making sure everyone feels comfortable and safe.
Exactly. So to answer our caller's question, start small and make it part of everyday interactions and use books, play, and simple learning. Consent is really about respect, and when we normalize it early, kids grow up knowing that their bodies are their own.
Well said. And remember, kids are naturally great learners. They take in these messages faster than we think. We just have to keep reinforcing them with consistency, kindness, and confidence.
This is such great information. Thank you, Dr. Thorne. And to our caller, I hope this gives you some fresh ideas. Now, on to our next caller.
Hi, my name is June and I'm from Council, Quebec, and I have a question for you guys. I know that sexuality education is part of the curriculum, but I sometimes feel unsure about the best way to introduce these topics to my class. Do you have any practical tips or activities that make teaching sexuality education more engaging and age-appropriate? Thank you so much.
Such an important question. And honestly, a lot of educators feel this way, wanting to do it right, but not always sure where to start. Dr. Lucas, what's your take?
This is a great question because it shows that teachers care about doing this well. The first thing I always say is, sexuality education is not just about biology, it's about relationships, body autonomy, emotions, consent, and identity. And young children are already learning about these things, whether we talk about them or not.
Right. Kids pick up messages from their environment, from TV shows, to the ways we talk about families. If we don't teach them, they're still learning, just maybe not the right things.
Exactly. So, let's talk about how to introduce these topics in a way that's natural and age appropriate. One of the best methods, storytelling and play.
Oh, you know I love that. Any favorite books you recommend?
Absolutely. Books like Bodies Are Cool by Tyler Fetter and What Makes a Baby by Corey Silverberg introduce body diversity and reproduction in simple, inclusive ways. Another great one is Julian is a Mermaid by Jessica Love. It's a beautiful way to talk about gender expression and identity through storytelling.
Books are such a great entry point. And what about play? How does that fit in?
Play is where kids make sense of the world, but sometimes we see strict gender roles creep into it. Like when kids play house and assume mom has to be a girl and dad has to be a boy. Instead of shutting it down, we can gently challenge it. Ask, could there be two moms in this family? What if the dad stays home and takes care of the baby? These little nudges help kids expand their thinking.
That's so good. And it's not about forcing ideas, it's about offering possibilities.
Yes, and speaking of expanding thinking, let's talk about language, because even the way we phrase things reinforces assumptions.
So true. Simple shifts make a huge difference. Instead of saying, ask your mom and dad, try, ask your grown-ups, because not every family has a mom or dad. Or when teaching body parts, use proper terms instead of nicknames, because kids deserve accurate information.
And that helps with safety, right?
100%. When kids know the correct words for their bodies, they are less vulnerable to abuse and more likely to speak up if something makes them uncomfortable.
Okay, so we've got books, play, and language. What about an actual activity teachers can do?
One simple one? The yes-no game. The kids have different scenarios, and they have to respond to them with yes or no. Like, your friend wants to hold your hand. What do you say? Do you feel upset when someone takes your toy without asking? This gets them thinking about boundaries in a fun, low-pressure way.
Love it. So, to our caller, start small. Use books, language, and play to naturally introduce these concepts. And remember, this is a child's right. They deserve this information in a way that makes sense for them.
Absolutely. And when we make it part of our everyday teaching, it becomes second nature.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Just keep it simple, honest, and consistent. Kids will take it from there.
Thank you, Dr. Lucas, and thank you to our callers. I hope this information helps all you educators and future educators and parents and all you curious people out there.
Thank you so much for having me. Best of luck to all future educators, and make sure to apply these practices. Until next time.
See you next time, Dr. Lucas.
Thank you, Dr. Lucas.
Well, that was such an insightful conversation. A big thank you to Dr. Lucas Thorne for joining us today and sharing his expertise on early childhood sexuality education. It's so important for us to have these discussions openly and with the right information.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up, let's take a moment to recap the key points we covered today. First, there are so many different ways to introduce sexuality education in early childhood settings. Whether through read-alouds, role-playing, open-ended discussions, or everyday teachable moments. The key is making it interactive, age-appropriate, and part of the natural learning environment.
Exactly. And we can't stress this enough, but sexuality education is every child's right. Providing accurate, developmentally appropriate information early on helps children build a strong foundation for understanding their bodies, boundaries, and relationships. The research, including the work of Dr. Thorne, clearly shows that addressing these topics sooner rather than later leads to healthier, more informed individuals.
And let's not forget the role of educators in all of this. Teachers play such a crucial part in shaping how young children understand these concepts. And it's so important for them to seek out workshops, professional development, and resources to enhance their approach to sexuality education.
Yes, the more educators learn, the more confident they'll be in engaging with these lessons seamlessly into their classrooms. And of course, engaging with parents is essential, helping them understand that these conversations are already happening informally and that structured, intentional education benefits everyone.
So, to all the educators, caregivers, and parents listening, keep having these conversations. Keep creating safe spaces for children to ask questions and explore their curiosity in a healthy way. And remember, sexuality education isn't about taking away innocence. It's about giving kids the tools to understand themselves.
Wow, Jamie, that's truly such a great note to end on. Thank you for all those tuning in today. If you found this episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe, share, and join the conversation. Let's keep working together to make sexuality education a positive and essential part of early learning.
Tune in next week when we talk about a subject that relates to today's gender-inclusive pedagogy. Thanks again, everyone. Until next time.
Take good care, everyone.